I decided to take this crazy leap of faith and start working on my own indie project, which I call Ground Zero. I'll probably make another video for that at some point where I talk a little bit more about that story. But what I wanted to do in this video was just talk about the failures that I had to deal with over the last 6 months and why it was actually important for me to go through those things. And then that way, hopefully, maybe also for you, it might not be that scary to actually start making your own story. Which, by the way, if you are starting one, I'd love to know. Leave it in the comments or something. Let me know what you're up to. But anyways, at the start of this year, I was essentially still working at a production called Mighty Nine, which is coming out on Amazon if it's not already out by the time this video is out. And so I told myself that after the contract ends at my job, that I'm going to start finally working on my own personal project, Ground Zero. You know, it's this sci-fi dark fantasy, and it's gonna be so cool because it's inspired by things like Dune and Berserk and Avatar, like all these things that I told myself in my head before I even started writing the story. So I didn't have a story, but I was like hyped about it. You know, I was like, this is gonna be good. Like I should just start working on it. And I think that was my first problem. In my mind, I was gonna make Ground Zero this big anime, 2 seasons. It's gonna be 45 minutes each episode. It's gonna look like all the best anime that's coming out right now with the crazy Sakuga. And also my dogs are crazy. It's gonna look like this. It's gonna look like my dogs fighting, except actual anime characters. But let me, guys, I'm trying to tell a story here. Jeez. Anyways, we're back. And so as I was saying, I had this whole thing where I wanted to start so big. And it's one of those things where I think it's kind of obvious that people tell you start small, but for some reason I didn't really think about that. It was a very strong learning experience for me because I actually needed to do that. I needed to be super ambitious because it is in that hunger and desire to try to make something so big that I learned a lot about what I knew and what I didn't know. And what I knew was character design. I had done that. I knew a little bit of animation as well. But what I didn't know was about storyboarding. I didn't know too much about being a director. I didn't know about how to actually pace a story and how things are different from a TV show to a comic to a book or whatever have you. I realized that in trying to be too big, I did need to learn all those things, but I didn't need to learn them first and then start my story. I could do them at the same time, right? So I started trying to learn how to storyboard, and I made little poor thumbnails for how this story was going to be for like a 1-minute trailer. And I feel that as a result of that, I was a lot more comfortable and even less anxious about trying new things. Maybe this is not an issue for you guys, but for me, I don't know. I always feel like I try to avoid approaching things that I feel like I'm going to fail at. And that actually goes to the second point that I was going to make, which was I was so afraid to fail, which I guess is the title of this video. But what I mean by that is that when I was writing the story, I actually talked about this publicly on one of my live streams where I told people, hey, I want to make an anime and I'm going to try to put it out in 8 months and blah, blah, blah. And the moment I did that, I feel like a huge weight went on my shoulders because then I said, oh my God, people are expecting this story and I'm not even good enough. Like, I don't even know how to make an anime, you know, like just because I worked in the industry doesn't mean I know how to make something like this end to end. I felt like people expected something of me, expected a certain quality and a certain level of me. And so I always felt like I was so afraid to even share anything about what I was doing, you know, or like just keeping it a secret because I was afraid that I would get judged for being lesser and not qualified for the goals that I was trying to make. And even making this video, which I was so hesitant to try to make, I realized that I need to just do it, right? I need to learn because that is the only way I can see my failures and kind of go back to that first point, right? I need to be able to try it so that I know what I can continue to work on. But if I never actually make the attempt, I will never be better at that. I'll never be able to develop those skills, which I know, again, is kind of like common, obvious advice. We hear it all the time, but it's one of those things where just because you hear it doesn't mean that you can easily just apply it to your everyday. But I think overall, that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this, was that I realized that the third point was about being personal and being open. And I think one of my struggles was when I created Ground Zero, and because I shared it publicly, I felt like I was trying to please my viewers online, or I was trying to think about the critics and all of that stuff with my story, like who's going to read the story. And as a result of that, I ended up being in a situation where I was trying to, look at other shows and other comics and trying to reference them and trying to see like, oh, this worked really well, that worked really well, let's put that all together. But what I was actually doing was avoiding the fact that I was afraid to open up about my own personal choices and being afraid to talk about the story that I wanted to tell, because I was worried that if I didn't hit certain check marks, like having it be a shonen action story with cool aura farming protagonists and XYZ, that it wasn't going to be interesting to other people. Probably one of the most important things, for me at least, when it comes to writing your own story, is that at the end of the day, I'm writing it for myself first. I think once I realized that, I started to tell myself as I was writing it, like, well, I want to write a story that either the future me would enjoy reading, or maybe the younger me would enjoy reading. And if that's maybe hard for you, something that I also tried was thinking about if I wanted to share this with a friend, right? Like if I were to tell this just to one friend and I wanted them to get excited about this story, how would I go about doing this? And that was for me a big thing. It's part of why I wanted to also share this with you guys, because I do want to talk about my story more on this channel. But I've always been afraid to, because I found that it was always a lot easier for me just to talk about objective truths like, hey, this is anatomy and this is how you draw it. And whenever it came to me talking about my own struggles and the things that I was learning, I don't know, I felt very vulnerable about it. But in many ways, to be a storyteller is to be vulnerable. So yeah, I think those are the three things that I struggled with a lot over the last 6 months. There was also many other things too that I could talk about. And if you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments, because there were other things too, like learning how to manage a team for my animation studio, learning how to think about the story and the narrative and building something that is either fun from a world building perspective, but also something that is emotional from a character perspective, right? If any of those things sound interesting to you, do let me know. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. This is the first time I'm doing something like this. I hope that it was valuable to you. And even if it wasn't valuable to you at this time, that's okay, because it's valuable to me as I rewatch it and learn how I can make these videos better and more informative and valuable in the future. But yeah, start your story. It's okay to fail. It's valuable. All right, guys. Happy drawings. Peace.